Snow swallowed the sound of her own footsteps. Evelyn Hart ran blind through the trees, lungs burning, boots slipping on the iced-over path. The forest above Snow Ridge was a blur of black trunks and white drifts, branches bowing under the weight of the storm. Behind her, someone crashed through the underbrush. "Evelyn, stop!" A man's voice. Too close. She didn't look back at first. Every instinct screamed don't. Her breath tore in and out. The flashlight in her hand swung wildly, throwing thin, shaky light over the trail. Her mind kept looping one thought over and over, frantic and senseless. He's going to catch me. He's going to catch me. "Evelyn, listen to me," the voice shouted, closer now, raw with anger. "You don't understand what he is." Her foot caught on a rock hidden under snow. She stumbled, windmilling. She risked a look over her shoulder. For a split second, everything froze into fragments. A man just yards behind her, coat flapping, face twisted in a way she'd seen before, arm outstretched. And far behind him, cresting the rise they'd come over minutes earlier, another figure. A darker shape against the swirling white, running hard, too far to see clearly, the line of his shoulders horribly familiar. The flashlight slipped from her grasp. The world pitched. Her boot slid on a thin sheet of ice at the edge of the trail. She pitched sideways, weightless, then slammed down the short slope. Her skull met stone with a crack that split the night. White light exploded behind her eyes. The last thing she heard was that voice again, hoarse, furious, mingling with another, more distant one. Then nothing. Just snow and dark and silence. They found her the next morning. A search party of local officers and volunteers combed the woods in a grid pattern, breath steaming in the freezing air. The storm had blown out overnight, leaving the sky hard and brittle blue. For hours, they saw nothing but drifts and deer tracks. Then one officer, halfway down a narrow ravine, spotted an unnatural slash of color. A red scarf half buried in snow, like a cut in the white. "Hey!" he yelled. "Over here!" He slid down the small, icy incline, heart pounding. Brush scratched his coat. He fell to his knees next to the still form lying crumpled at the bottom. Dark hair fanned across the snow, half-frozen strands stuck to pale skin. Evelyn's coat had come open. Her lips were blue. A thin smear of dried blood marked the hairline at the back of her head. The officer shoved his gloves aside and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. For a beat too long, there was nothing. Then, faint, fluttering, a pulse. "She's got a pulse," he shouted. "Weak, but she's alive." They radioed for an ambulance. While they waited, he and another officer worked to wrap her in blankets, careful to keep her neck straight. A medic arrived, oxygen mask pressed over Evelyn's mouth, gloved hands checking pupils, vitals, responsiveness. They loaded her onto the stretcher and into the ambulance, doors slamming shut. At the edge of the clearing, Nathan Reed stood with snow in his hair, his coat unzipped, like he'd run here from town without stopping. He watched them carry her past him, watched the paramedic climb into the back. His hands shook. "Is it her?" he asked, voice rough. The officer who'd found her nodded. "You said she might have headed toward the old ridge trail," he said. "You were right." "Is she?" "She's alive," the man said. "Barely, but alive. They're taking her to St. Mary's." Nathan's gaze locked on the back doors of the ambulance, the small window where he could just see the edge of Evelyn's blanket. "Can I ride with?" "Can't, Mr. Reed," the officer said. "Protocol. And we'll need to talk to you again. About last night." The ambulance pulled away, siren wailing, tires crunching over frozen gravel. Nathan stood in the middle of the cleared road, snowflakes drifting down around him. For a second, he wasn't in Redford's woods anymore. He was 4 years in the past, on a different stretch of ice, watching another set of ambulance doors close on another woman he hadn't been able to save. His late wife had left in winter, too. This time, it was Evelyn Hart. The light hurt. It scraped across the inside of her skull when she tried to open her eyes. Evelyn flinched and shut them again. "Hey," a woman's voice said gently. "You're okay. You're safe. You're in the hospital." Hospital. She forced her eyes open in slits. White ceiling tiles swam into focus. A heart monitor beeped steadily somewhere to her left. Something tugged at the back of her hand, an IV line taped to her skin. A nurse in pale blue scrubs leaned over her, adjusting a drip. "What happened?" Evelyn rasped. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "You were found out by the Snow Ridge Trail," the nurse said. "Looks like you fell. You've been unconscious for about 30 hours. 30. Evelyn swallowed. Her mouth tasted metallic. My head feels like a demolition site. You hit it pretty hard, the nurse said. You've got a concussion and a nasty bruise. The CT scan looked okay, no bleeding, but the doctors think you have some retrograde amnesia. You might not remember the hours before your fall clearly. That can be normal with this kind of injury. Retrograde amnesia. The word sat cold in her gut. She probed gently at her memories. There was a forest, snow, the burn of cold air in her lungs, the sensation of running for her life, and that voice. Her heart stuttered. Someone was chasing me, she whispered. The nurse's expression flickered. The detectives will want to talk to you about that, she said. They've been waiting. Detective Howard looked like he'd been carved out of an old oak tree. Square shoulders, deep lines around his mouth, eyes that missed very little. His partner, Ramirez, was younger, with sharp cheekbones and careful hands. They pulled up chairs beside her bed, notebooks ready. How are you feeling, Miss Hart? Howard asked. Like my skull got used for batting practice, Evelyn said. But I can talk. He gave the ghost of a smile. All right, we'll keep it simple. He ran through the basics, her full name, age, address, where she worked. She answered on autopilot, the facts comforting in their solidity. Then he flipped a page. You've been missing for roughly 48 hours, he said. You were last seen at Nathan Reed's home up on Snow Ridge Drive. Do you remember being there? Evelyn frowned. She saw a living room with panoramic windows and a fire glowing low in the stone fireplace. Rolled up plans on a coffee table. Nathan pouring coffee in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, his dark hair a little messy. Yes, she said slowly. We were going over design revisions for his cabin. What time did you leave? Ramirez asked. She pressed her fingers to her temple. Pain flared immediately, hot and sharp. I don't know, she admitted. Late. The storm was picking up. The lights flickered. He told me to go before the roads iced over too much. How did you leave? Howard asked. On foot. Driving? On foot, she said. My car was in the shop. I thought it's just a mile to the main road. I've walked it before. Then what? Ramirez asked. Evelyn's chest tightened. I remember walking, she said. Snow in my face. It was quiet. Then I heard footsteps behind me. How close? Howard asked. Far at first, she said. Then closer. I told myself it was nothing. Just wind, branches. But it sounded like boots on snow, heavy, following me. You turned around? Ramirez prompted. Not at first. Her throat felt thick. I sped up. Whoever it was sped up too. That's when I started running. Her pulse stuttered, breath picking up just remembering. Did you see who it was? Howard asked. She forced herself to pull the memory into focus. Trees whipping past, the beam of her flashlight bouncing, the blood roar in her ears. Then, because terror and curiosity fight in strange ways, she'd thrown a look over her shoulder. I turned once, she said. There was a man, close, stumbling on the trail but still coming. Behind him, the room tilted. She pressed the heel of her hand to her eye. Everything got blurry, snow in my eyes. I only saw a coat, shoulders, a shape. Could you recognize him? Ramirez asked. Her stomach twisted. Her brain, desperate to make sense of chaos, had slapped a face onto that dark blur. A familiar face. One she'd seen nearly every day for the last month, bent over plans and lumber lists. It looked like Nathan, she whispered. A muscle jumped in Howard's jaw. Like Nathan Reed? He asked. I'm not saying it was him, she said quickly. It was dark. I was terrified. I only glanced back. My brain could have been playing tricks. It reminded me of him. Howard's pen paused. Miss Hart, he said carefully. Do you know about Mr. Reed's history? What history? She asked. 4 years ago, Ramirez said quietly. His wife went missing in winter. She was found at the bottom of a ravine not far from his property. Officially ruled accidental. Mr. Reed was the last person to see her alive. Evelyn stared. Nathan, standing by the cabin window, saying in that guarded, almost apologetic way, I don't talk about the past much. It doesn't help anyone feel better. No, she said. He never told me that. Howard exchanged a look with Ramirez. He should have, he muttered. The town of Redford feasted on gossip the way it feasted on sugar cookies at Christmas. By the end of the day, every coffee shop conversation came back around to the same points. The snowstorm, the missing designer, the rich widower on the hill. The wife's death was always weird, someone said in line at the bakery. I heard she was going to leave him, another customer whispered at the pharmacy. Just like this one was getting close. History repeating itself, if you ask me. Online, old articles resurfaced. Photos of Nathan and his late wife in happier days were pulled from digital graveyards and reposted with new, uglier captions. And into that swirling storm of suspicion walked Mark Spencer. He showed up at the hospital that evening with flowers and a look that hovered between wounded and righteous. He was in his early 40s, handsome in a polished, distant way, with steel gray eyes and a jaw that clenched a little too easily. He'd been Nathan's neighbor once, and before that, the husband of Nathan's future wife. "Evelyn," he said, standing in her doorway, bouquet in hand. "I came as soon as I heard." He looked at her bandaged head and paled. "I'm so sorry," he said. "You didn't deserve any of this." She frowned. She'd met Mark once or twice. Short, stiff interactions at a hardware store, a passing introduction at a town fundraiser. But they weren't close. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I did," he said. "You're not the first woman who's been hurt after getting too close to Nathan." The way he said Nathan's name, like it tasted bitter, made something in her chest tighten. "You think he—" "I think," Mark said carefully, "that where he goes, trouble follows. My wife thought she knew him too. She ended up dead in the snow. Accidental fall, stamped on a report that never made sense." His eyes glinted. "I don't want to see that happen again," he said. He put the flowers down and left without staying long, as if his real audience had been the nurses and orderlies who saw him come and go. Not long after he left, Chloe Mercer came. Chloe swept into the room like she owned it. Her hair was perfect. Her winter coat was expensive. Her eyes were shiny with just enough unshed tears. "Oh my God, Eve," she breathed. "You scared the life out of me." "Hi, Chloe," Evelyn said, caught somewhere between relief and wariness. Once upon a time, they'd been inseparable at the design firm downtown, two young women working twice as hard for half the recognition. Then Chloe had started taking shortcuts, and one of those shortcuts had involved putting her name on Evelyn's work first. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. "I saw your face on the news," Chloe said, dabbing at the corner of her eye. "Missing designer, last seen at Nathan Reed's cabin." Her voice broke. "I couldn't sleep." "I'm okay," Evelyn said. "More or less. My head and I are renegotiating our relationship." Chloe laughed a little too loudly. "Still joking," she said. "That's good." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "They're saying he chased you," she whispered. "Nathan, that he snapped, like he did with his wife." Evelyn flinched. "They don't know that," she said. "I don't even know that. My brain is scrambled." Chloe's hand hovered over the bed rail, a performance of support that never quite touched. "I did some digging," Chloe said. "About his wife. It's ugly, Eve. Ugly divorce, whispered affairs, a whole lot of missing details. You know how small towns are. Everybody knows something. No one knows everything, and they all like a good villain." She leaned in. "Men like him get away with things because women like us second-guess ourselves," she said. "Don't do that. If your gut says he was there, believe it." Evelyn's gut said a lot of things. Most of them were just run. "I remember someone behind me," she said, voice small. "I turned and I thought for a second it was him, but I don't know if that was real memory or my mind filling in blanks." "Well," Chloe said, straightening, "if you ever need someone who's not dazzled by his tragic widower act, I'm right here." It sounded like loyalty. It felt like something else. For a while, life shrank to the size of Evelyn's apartment, and the dentist drill hum inside her skull. She got discharged with painkillers, instructions not to drive until the headaches eased, and a long list of watch-for symptoms. Her closest friend, Lucas Hale, took it upon himself to enforce those rules. Lucas had known her since college. He was now an attorney at a mid-sized firm in town, smart and perpetually under-caffeinated. He spent the first few days after her release bringing soup, changing out her ice packs, and insulting daytime TV. "You know what the worst part of my job is?" he said one afternoon, flipping it from channel to channel. "The fact that my clients think courtroom drama looks like this." "At least your clients have the sense to hire you," she said. "Mine are throwing around accusations based on vibes. You're my client now," he said, "and my vibe is they're getting ahead of themselves." He was right. The detectives hadn't arrested anyone yet. They were still investigating all angles. But the court of public opinion had already settled on a narrative. Tragic widower, second suspicious incident, must be guilty. Nathan hadn't reached out. Evelyn understood the legal logic. Any contact could be twisted. But the silence still hurt. She found herself scrolling past his name in her phone more than once, thumb hovering over the call button, then closing the app like she'd almost touched a hot stove. Meanwhile, Chloe became a frequent visitor. She brought magazines, gossip, updates on the design world, little barbs about men who wear grief like a prop. I know we had our issues, she said one day, perched on the edge of Evelyn's couch, but seeing you on that missing poster, it put things in perspective. Evelyn wanted to believe her. She also couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe liked having a front row seat to a story everyone else wanted to watch from a distance. The Harrington Hotel glittered every December. Its marble lobby transformed into a postcard version of Christmas, a towering tree in the center, garlands draped along the staircase, antique ornaments, and carefully placed candles casting warm light over polished stone. This year, for the first time, the person behind that transformation was Evelyn. She'd won the contract months before the accident. When the board called to ask if she still wanted it, part of her had wanted to say no. Hide. Let someone else take the spotlight. But hiding hadn't helped her in the woods, so she'd said yes. By the week before Christmas, the Harrington looked like a snow globe come to life. Reporters took pictures. The charity board praised her vision. Most people in town pretended for a few hours that there wasn't a half-solved mystery hanging over the whole affair. The night of the gala, Lucas showed up at her apartment in a suit and a determined expression. "We're going," he said before she could invent an excuse. "You spent 2 weeks working on that tree. You're going to stand in front of it at least once without a concussion," she smirked. "You make a compelling argument." She wore a silver dress that fell just below her knees, simple but elegant. Makeup hid the last faint yellow of the bruise on her temple. As they walked into the hotel arm in arm, conversation dipped audibly. She lifted her chin. If they wanted a show, they could watch her walk. Chloe intercepted them near the bar, champagne in hand. "There she is," she said, eyes sweeping over Evelyn's dress. "Redford's very own comeback story." "Please don't pitch that to any networks," Evelyn said. "Relax," Chloe said, laughing. "We both know if anyone's getting a Netflix deal out of this, it's—" Her gaze flicked toward the far side of the room. Evelyn followed it. Nathan Reed stood near one of the tall windows, half in shadow. He wore a dark suit and no tie, hands tucked into his pockets. A few people orbited him at a careful distance, like planets unsure how close they could get to a sun that might be a black hole. He shouldn't have looked that good with that much suspicion hanging over him. His eyes found hers. For a second, the noise of the room faded. It was just the two of them, across 40 feet of polished marble and years of unspoken things. Then Lucas cleared his throat. "Want me to glare him into dust?" he asked under his breath. "I think the town's handling that," she said. She turned away. The evening unfolded in a strange, suspended normalcy. Speeches were made, hands shaken, money raised. The tree glowed. People took pictures with their spouses, their colleagues, their curated lives. Mark Spencer arrived late, with just enough fanfare to be noticed. He shook hands with the mayor, spoke in low tones with Detective Howard, cast a long, pointed glance at Nathan. At one point, Evelyn found herself standing not 3 feet away from Mark as he complimented her work. "You've made this place look like a movie set," he said. "My wife would have loved it." He looked genuinely sad when he said it. For a brief, confusing moment, she felt sorry for him. It was easy to believe that grief could turn into obsession. Easy to imagine how a man who'd lost everything might fixate on the one person he blamed. She went home that night feeling like she'd walked through someone else's life. Her building was quiet when Lucas dropped her off. Most of her neighbors were still at the gala or out at other holiday events. The hallway smelled faintly of pine from a wreath someone had hung 2 doors down. "Text me when you're in bed and not dizzy," Lucas said. "That's not negotiable." "I'm pretty sure that violates at least 3 privacy laws," she said, managing a smile. "Good," he said. "Sue me. I'll represent myself." He waited until she'd unlocked her door and stepped inside before heading back to the elevator. The apartment was dark. She flicked on the lamp by the couch, kicking off her heels, exhaling. Her head hurt faintly, the buzzing ache that had become background noise. She locked the door and turned toward the kitchen. Something was off. The hair on the back of her neck prickled. A subtle wrongness. A moved chair. a window shade at a slightly different angle. "Hello?" she called, hating how cliché it sounded. No answer. She started to reach for her phone. A shadow separated itself from the darker corner near the window. "Evelyn," a voice said softly. "We need to talk." She froze. The figure stepped forward. The lamplight caught his face. Mark Spencer. He was dressed in the same suit he'd worn at the gala. His tie was loosened. His eyes were bright in a way that made her stomach drop. "How did you get in here?" she demanded. "Your building's security is a joke," he said. "Front door propped open for smokers. Back door latch sticky. Apartment locks that can be picked with a credit card." He said it like he was giving a professional assessment, not admitting to breaking and entering. "I'm calling the police," she said, moving toward the coffee table where her phone lay. He stepped between her and it. "No," he said. "You're going to listen." Every instinct screamed, "This is bad." "Get out," she said, voice shaking. "Right now, or I'll scream." "You think anyone's going to hear you?" he asked. "They're all still at your pretty party." He took another step toward her. "Do you know what it's like," he asked quietly, "to watch a man destroy your life and walk away? To watch everyone feel sorry for him while they look at you like you're the crazy one?" "This isn't about you and Nathan," she said. "This is about you leaving my apartment before I press charges." He laughed. "My wife," he said, "was my whole world." And then he came along, the tragic, sensitive architect, the good listener. She started smiling differently, talking differently, saying it wasn't my fault things had gone stale, but I could see it. She was already gone. He looked at Evelyn like she represented all of that. "She left," he said. "She was on her way to him that night. That's what they don't put in the reports. She was going to his cabin. And then, bang, she slips. Over the edge, snow and ice, and no witnesses. Tell me that doesn't sound convenient." "Nathan's wife's death was ruled an accident," Evelyn said. "If you think otherwise, file a complaint, hire a lawyer." "I did," he snapped. "Nobody listened. Nobody cared. They saw him crying on the news and decided the story they wanted to believe." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Until someone sees through him," he said. "Until someone like you." Her heart hammered. "You're hurting because of what happened in your marriage," she said, scrambling for anything that might calm him. "But this isn't." "It is," he said. "Do you know what it was like, watching you up on that stage tonight? Watching him watch you? The way he looked at you? Just like he looked at her." His lip curled. "I could see the ending. You, finding out too late. You, ending up at the bottom of another ravine." He was close enough now that she could see the red at the edges of his eyes. "You were supposed to be smarter," he said. "See the signs. Walk away. But you didn't. So I had to nudge things along." Her blood went cold. He smiled, small and humorless. "You went up that road in a snowstorm," he said. "You walked out of his house alone. It wasn't hard to follow. Chloe told me you'd be there, you know. Told me what time you were leaving. She thought if I scared you enough, you'd run back to town, run back to her. I don't think she realized how hard it is to stop once a rock starts rolling downhill." He took another step. Every word he said slotted into the flash of memory from the woods like it had been waiting for them. "You," she whispered. "You were the one chasing me." His jaw clenched. "I told you to stop," he said. "I told you to listen. You wouldn't. You ran." He shook his head. "I didn't mean for you to fall," he said. "I didn't push you, but you ran from the truth, just like she did, just like everyone does." He reached for her. She jerked back, heart slamming. "Don't touch me," she said. "We wouldn't be here," he said softly, "if he didn't exist. You know that, don't you?" She grabbed the nearest object, her purse on the side table, and swung. It connected with his forearm with a dull thud. He swore, grabbing for her wrist. His fingers dug into her skin. Pain shot up her arm. She sucked in a breath to scream. The front door rattled. "Evelyn?" A voice called. "It's Nathan. Are you?" The door handle jiggled. Mark's eyes went wide. In a heartbeat, he let go of her, backing away. "You say one word," he hissed, "and no one will ever believe you again. Not after what they already think of him. You want to spend the rest of your life wondering if he'll snap? Or if they were right? Or you want this to end?" He slipped past her in 2 strides, moving down the hallway toward the back entrance. The door by the fire stairs creaked, then slammed. The front door opened a second later. Nathan stood there, snow in his hair again, breathing hard like he'd run up the stairs. His eyes swept her face, then dropped to her wrist where red marks were already blossoming. "What happened?" he demanded. "Are you okay?" Something in her snapped. "Get out," she said. He froze. "What?" "Get out," she repeated, voice shaking. Just go." "I heard yelling," he said. "I knocked. You didn't answer. The neighbor said your door was unlocked." I thought. "Everyone thinks you hurt me," she said, hysterical laughter edging her words. "And you just happened to show up at my apartment in the middle of the night, and someone just happens to be here before you. Do you understand how that looks?" His face went ashen. "I don't care how it looks," he said. "I cared that you didn't pick up your phone. I cared that you got dizzy at the gala and left early. I cared that your car wasn't in your spot downstairs. I cared that—" He swallowed, eyes closing for a beat. "Call Lucas," he said. "Call 911. Call whoever you trust, but don't stay here alone." She stared at him, chest heaving, brain spinning. In the distance, she could faintly hear sirens. Somebody must have called. If there was anything worse than waking up in a hospital with no memory of how you got there, it was sitting on your own couch watching police put handcuffs on someone you weren't sure you wanted them to take away. Detective Howard arrived with 2 uniformed officers not 5 minutes after Nathan. The neighbor across the hall, hair in curlers, peeked through her cracked door. "Miss Hart? Are you—" Howard stopped when he saw Nathan. His gaze flicked from Nathan to Evelyn's wrist and back. "What are you doing here, Mr. Reed?" he asked. "I came to check on her," Nathan said. "She didn't answer her phone." "He broke in," Evelyn said automatically, then caught herself. "I mean, someone broke in. Mark? Mark Spencer. He was here." Howard's eyes sharpened. "Mark Spencer?" he repeated. "He admitted he followed me in the woods," she said. He said Chloe told him I'd be at Nathan's. Her voice faltered. "He grabbed me. Then Nathan knocked and he ran out the back." Ramirez slipped down the hall to check the rear door. "It's standing open," she called back. "Fire stairs, footprints in the snow." Howard exhaled. He turned to the officers. "Put out a bolo for Mark Spencer," he said. "Breaking and entering, assault, witness intimidation." One of the officers peeled off to make the call. Howard rubbed a hand over his face. "You okay?" he asked Evelyn, softer now. "Define okay," she said. He looked at Nathan. "You," he said, "are coming with us too." Nathan stared. "On what charge?" "On the charge that you keep showing up where this woman gets hurt," Howard said. "You were the last to see her before she went missing. You just happened to be here when the man who threatened her runs. Maybe you're the unluckiest guy in town, or maybe there's more to the story." Nathan's jaw clenched. "Cuff him," Howard said. The officers stepped forward. "Detective," Evelyn protested. "He didn't." "We're not doing this here, Miss Hart," Howard said. "He'll have his chance to talk." They led Nathan out between them. He didn't struggle. The only time he looked back was when they reached the door. His eyes met Evelyn's for a moment. There was no anger there, no accusation, just a tired, hollow resignation, like he'd known this was coming the whole time. Nathan made bail. Redford was a small town. He wasn't going anywhere without the entire county noticing. But the image of him being led into the station in handcuffs was enough to solidify his role in the town's minds. Villain, finally caught. "He's got a lawyer," Lucas said, pacing Evelyn's living room later that week. "A good one, but the past weighs a lot in situations like this, Ev. 2 women, 2 winters, 1 guy at the center. It's the kind of pattern juries love." "He didn't do it," Evelyn said, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. Lucas looked at her. "You sound sure." "I am sure about 2 things," she said. 1, Mark chased me in the woods. 2, I wouldn't have walked back into my apartment and lived if Nathan hadn't knocked when he did." "Those are important things," Lucas said. She picked at a loose thread on her blanket. "I still don't remember everything," she admitted. "I remember running, falling. I remember Mark's voice now, yelling at me. But there's this gap. Like there's someone else in the frame that I can't quite see." "Brains love drama," Lucas said. "They also love lying to us when they're scared. You might not get every frame back, but you've got enough for reasonable doubt." She thought about Nathan under police station fluorescent lights, hands folded in front of him, while Howard read him his rights. "Reasonable doubt isn't enough," she said. "Not if the alternative is him spending his life as Redford's favorite ghost story." Lucas sighed. "So what's your plan?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "I don't know," she said. Pray my brain decides to cooperate by Christmas? Christmas Eve in Redford always felt like a movie set. Downtown, white lights wrapped every lamppost. Wreaths hung from shop doors. The big tree in the square glittered with ornaments donated over the years. Somewhere near the top, there was a paper snowflake from a long graduated first grade class. Every year, the town held a tree lighting ceremony and charity concert. Families came in bundled coats, kids hopped from foot to foot in the cold, the church choir sang carols slightly off key. This year, the event carried an extra current under the carols. Nathan was out on bail, forbidden from leaving the county. He did not attend. No one wanted to see him there anyway. Mark Spencer, on the other hand, was front and center. Charges for the break-in at Evelyn's apartment were pending. He'd lawyered up fast. While his attorney negotiated, he played the injured party, the grieving widower, the concerned citizen, the man who only ever wanted to protect women from a dangerous predator on the hill. The charity board had invited him to speak. He's a major donor, Chloe said when Evelyn gaped at the program. What did you expect? They're not going to kick him off the stage because of some misunderstanding in your apartment. Some misunderstanding? Evelyn repeated. He grabbed me. He admitted he chased me in the woods. And yet, Chloe said coolly, Detective Howard hasn't arrested him, which means they don't have enough, which means legally it's your word against his, again. Her tone softened. Look, I'm not saying I trust him. I'm saying he knows how to look trustworthy. Be careful tonight. Lucas drove Evelyn to the square. You don't have to go, he said for the 10th time. I designed the set for the concert stage, she said. If I don't show up, Chloe will pick the most hideous stock backdrop she can find and blame me for it. You realize you're allowed to let other people make bad choices, he said. Not when they're going to hang those bad choices in front of my tree, she said. But her fingers twisted in her gloves. They joined the crowd near the back, where it was easier to breathe. Snowflakes drifted down lazily. Children ran circles around adults. The choir's voices rose and fell. Evelyn tried to focus on the music. Ladies and gentlemen, the host said into the microphone when the carols ended. Before we light the tree and start the concert, we'd like to invite someone very special up to say a few words. He's been a generous supporter of our community for years. Please welcome Mark Spencer. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Mark walked up the steps to the small stage, coat open over his suit, scarf artfully wrapped. He moved with practiced ease, a man comfortable being watched. Evelyn's spine stiffened. He reached the microphone and smiled out at the crowd. Good evening, Redford, he said. The sound of his voice hit her like a physical blow. Watchful quiet replaced the murmur around her. He kept talking. Christmas is a time for family, he said, for remembering the people we've lost and holding close the people we still have. 4 years ago, I lost my wife during this season. I know what grief feels like in the cold. His tone was smooth, well modulated, the kind made for speeches and sympathy. But beneath the polished words, she could hear the echo of something else. Evelyn, stop. Evelyn, listen to me. Her breath hitched. He went on. When I heard that another woman had been hurt in our woods this month, right near where my wife... His words blurred. The world narrowed to the cadence of his voice, the way it rose and cracked on certain syllables, the way it wrapped around her name in her memory. Snowy branches flashed behind her eyes, the beam of a flashlight, the crunch of feet in snow. Ev? Lucas murmured. You okay? She couldn't answer. Her head pounded, a pulse of fire behind her eyes. On stage, Mark continued, So when I say we must look out for one another, I mean it. We can't close our eyes to danger just because it wears a sad smile. We wouldn't be here if he didn't exist. You know that, don't you? The memory slammed into the present. Her knees buckled. Evelyn? Lucas said, alarmed. She staggered, bumping into someone behind her. The ground tilted. In a blink, she was back in the woods. The flashlight swung. The voice shouted. She turned her head and saw, not Nathan, Mark. Close enough to see the wild in his eyes, close enough to see the way his mouth twisted around her name. And over his shoulder, farther up the trail, another figure, Nathan, running, too far away to reach her before her foot hit ice. In the churchyard, present-day Evelyn tripped over someone's boot. The crowded square heaved. She went down, her shoulder hitting the packed snow, her head snapping back and clipping the edge of a low wooden barrier. Pain flared, then clarity. Ev! Lucas was there, hands hovering. Talk to me. Her breath sawed in and out. The pounding in her skull eased, not into emptiness this time, but into focus. I remember, she whispered. Remember what? He asked. She pushed herself up on one elbow, ignoring the protests from her muscles. Everything, she said. The night in the woods. My apartment. She looked at the stage. Mark was still talking, blissfully unaware of the way the world had just snapped into focus for her. I need Detective Howard, she said. You're sure? Howard asked, 10 minutes later in the small conference room the town hall used for board meetings. It smelled faintly of coffee and dust. Christmas music seeped in from the hallway. I am sure enough to put my name on it, Evelyn said. And then some. He looked older up close, tired, but there was a new kind of alertness in his eyes. Walk me through it again, he said. She did. How she'd gone to Nathan's cabin that night. How she'd left alone, on foot, in the storm. How she'd heard footsteps behind her, a voice calling her name. How in the hospital, her fear and the things she'd been told about Nathan had colored everything. I wanted the person behind me to be someone who showed up in the story, she said, and who had a history that made sense. Everyone was already suspicious of him. My brain used that. It glued his face onto a blur. And now? Howard asked. Now I remember the blur, she said. And it's not his face, it's Mark's. She described the chase, the snag on the ice, the fall, the flash she'd caught over Mark's shoulder of another man far back on the trail. Nathan, she said. He was trying to catch up. He didn't make it before I fell. He called it in the next morning. That's the only reason I'm alive. Howard jotted notes, jaw tight. And your apartment, he said. Tell me again what he said there. She repeated Mark's words. The way he'd talked about his wife, about Nathan, about being forced to scare her. His voice, she finished, is the voice I heard in the trees. Not just the words, the cadence, the hate. She swallowed. It's the same voice that made that speech out there 10 minutes ago. Howard exhaled slowly. We've got his car on the traffic cam, he said, near the trailhead that night. Win us the gate. We've got his shoe prints outside your building from the break-in. We've got him on record as the aggrieved ex-husband with a grudge. What we didn't have was someone willing to say, he was there. He chased me. Now you do, she said. And Chloe Mercer? He asked. You're certain she told him where you'd be? She said as much, Evelyn said, in more coy words. But she knew my schedule. She knew my meetings with Nathan. She knew when I'd be walking. She resented me long before this. Howard nodded. We've been pulling phone records, he said. There are late-night calls between them in the days before your disappearance. Dozens of texts. If we squeeze him and he gives us her part in this, then I lose my best friend all over again, Evelyn said quietly. He looked at her for a long moment. Sometimes, he said, the monsters aren't strangers. They didn't take Mark on stage. Howard was smarter than that. He waited until the speech ended, until Mark stepped off the platform to polite applause, until the choir started another carol and the mayor raised a hand for the tree lighting. Then he and two uniformed officers moved through the crowd like a riptide. Mr. Spencer, Howard called. Mark turned, his pleasant public smile already in place. Yes, detective, he said. Is there a problem? We need you to come with us, Howard said, to answer some more questions. In the middle of a Christmas event? Mark said, voice loud enough to draw curious eyes. That seems theatrical. So does breaking into a woman's apartment after threatening her in the woods, Howard said calmly. Mark's face flickered. You don't have? We have enough, Howard said. Car footage, footprints, witnesses, and a victim who just got her memory back. Mark's gaze flicked toward the side of the square where Evelyn stood with Lucas. For the first time, there was real panic in his eyes. He bolted. It happened fast. 1 second, he was standing in the glow of the tree lights. The next, he shoved through a cluster of people, sending someone stumbling into a hot cocoa stand. Cups toppled, chocolate spilled, kids shrieked. Stop him, someone yelled. Howard swore under his breath and lunged after him. The officers followed. The crowd parted with a collective gasp. Evelyn watched as Mark ran down the side street, his dress shoes slipping on packed snow. One of the officers nearly went down, grabbed a trash can, corrected course. Howard kept his footing, surprisingly agile for his age. Mark made it half a block before his luck ran out. His shoe hit an icy patch. His leg flew out from under him. He crashed onto his back, sliding into a snowbank with undignified force. By the time he scrambled up, Howard was on him. They grappled for a moment, the older man grunting, Mark swearing, but there was never really a question of how it would end. With two officers helping, they had Mark face down and cuffed in under 30 seconds. He thrashed once more, then went limp. "This isn't over," he panted. "You're all blind. He's the one. He ruins everything." "You've said that a lot," Howard said, breathing hard. "It's starting to sound more like a confession than an accusation." He hauled him up. People peered from the edge of the alley, some with phones out, recording. Evelyn turned away. She didn't want to remember Mark like this. Pathetic, wet with snow, still clinging to a story where he was the hero. She wanted to remember what he really was. A man who couldn't live with his own choices, so he tried to rearrange everyone else's into a pattern that fit his pain. They arrested Chloe the next day. Evelyn didn't hear about it from the news. She heard about it from Lucas, Velm, who showed up at her apartment door with a paper bag of groceries and a look that said, "Sit down before I tell you this." She didn't just warn him, he said when she did. They sat at her small kitchen table, mugs of coffee cooling between them. Howard had shown them the phone records, late-night calls, long ones, text messages with locations, a pinned photo of the Snow Ridge Trail. But it was Mark's interrogation that sealed it. "He cracked after 12 hours, Lucas said. They leaned on him hard. He admitted she told him when you'd be leaving Nathan's house. She told him you were stubborn, that you needed a scare. She thought if you got lost or spooked bad enough, you'd drop the cabin job. Maybe leave town. Either way, she wouldn't have to compete with you anymore." Evelyn stared at the table. "Compete," she repeated. "Like this is a reality show." "People do wild things when they feel cornered," Lucas said. "She's the one who boxed herself in," Evelyn said. "She lied. She cheated. She stepped on everyone she could. I just kept doing my job." "Your existence was a threat," he said. "That was enough." The betrayal hit her harder than the rock had. She'd known on some level that Chloe wasn't truly back, that whatever they'd once had as friends had been eroded by those late nights in the office when Chloe had smiled and presented designs Evelyn had done. But some old, naive part of her had still believed there were lines Chloe wouldn't cross. Apparently, attempted manslaughter wasn't one of them. "Is she going to prison?" Evelyn asked. "Probably," Lucas said. "Accessory to assault, at least. Depending on how the DA charges it, maybe conspiracy. She's already hired a shark. They'll probably push for a plea." "And Mark?" she asked. "His lawyer's not as good as he thinks he is," Lucas said. "He's looking at serious time, multiple counts. The DA loves a neat before and after narrative. Obsessed ex-husband finally held accountable, plays well." She exhaled. "How is Nathan?" she asked before she could stop herself. Lucas studied her for a second. "Different question," he said. "How are you with Nathan?" She thought about the look on Nathan's face as they'd led him away from her apartment. The way he'd come to her cabin consultation meetings, always a little hesitant at first, waiting to see if she'd flinch. "I don't know," she said. "He's been orbiting my life like some kind of gravitational field. Everything keeps falling toward him, whether I want it to or not." "Sounds exhausting," Lucas said, "and also like something you might need to talk to him about." "Is he still in custody?" she asked. "Not anymore," Lucas said. "Howard called this morning. They dropped the charges. He walked out an hour ago." "On Christmas Day," she said. Lucas nodded. "Howard said he tried to get him to go home and rest. He said he had something to do first." For the second time that week, there was a knock on Evelyn's door. This time, she checked the peephole. Nathan stood there, hat in his hands, snow on his shoulders. His posture was uncertain, like he wasn't sure if he'd ever be welcome inside. She opened the door. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he echoed. For a second, neither moved. Then she stepped back. "You should come in," she said. "You look like you're about to turn into a snowman." He huffed a quiet laugh and stepped inside, wiping his boots on the mat. The apartment was warmer now, in both temperature and the small details that signaled a life returning to itself. A half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, a string of fairy lights around the window, a plate of cookies Lucas's mom had sent. "I heard," she said, "about the charges." "Howard called you?" he asked. "Lucas did," she said. "Howard called him. Attorneys get the good gossip first." He smiled, faint but real. "I wanted to come sooner," he said. "But I thought showing up at your door again might be poorly received." I've had worse visitors, she said. He looked at her wrist. The bruises there had faded to faint yellow and green. I am so sorry, he said quietly. For what? She asked. Not being the one who hurt me? For making it easier for people to think I did, he said. For not telling you about my wife, about how she left Mark, about how she was on her way to me that night, about how I've been letting this town think the worst of me for 4 years because I thought I deserved it. He scrubbed a hand over his face. When I met you, he said, I liked that you didn't know the story, that you saw the cabin, not the ghost. I told myself I was protecting you from gossip. Really, I was protecting myself from having to see the look everyone gets when they connect my face to that headline. You were tired of seeing suspicion, she said. So you let me walk into it blind. He flinched. That's not an excuse, he said. That's context. She stepped close. I blamed you, she said. In my head, in the hospital, in the woods when I couldn't see who was behind me. I glued your face onto a blur because it made the story make sense. The widower, the second woman, the tragedy revisited. It fit too well. You believed what everyone else believed, he said. Why wouldn't you? Because I knew you, she said simply. Silence stretched between them for a moment, filled with all the conversations they hadn't had. How did it feel, she asked quietly, to walk out of that station today? Wrong, he said, surprising her. I kept waiting for someone to shout that they'd made a mistake, that I had to stay, that I hadn't done enough to earn getting out. He laughed bitterly. Mark was right about one thing, he said. I ruin things, not in the way he meant. But I've let my fear of being seen as a monster turn me into a ghost instead. Neither is much of a life. She let that sit for a moment. Then she said, what if you stopped letting other people write the story? He looked up, brow furrowing. What if you stopped living like a man waiting for a verdict, she said. What if you started living like someone who survived something and still deserves to be happy? He smiled without humor. Easy to say, he murmured. Hard to do. She agreed. Trust me, I know. I just found out my closest friend was willing to sacrifice me to settle a score in her head. I've been rewriting every memory I have of her this week. Nothing feels solid. Her voice wobbled. He moved before he could think better of it. Evelyn, he said softly, I'm sorry. For her, for him, for all of it. I wish I could fix. You can't, she said. And it's not your job. Mark and Chloe chose what they did. They used you as their excuse. That's on them. He exhaled, something easing in his shoulders. So what now? He asked. For you. I heal, she said, slowly, with help, from Lucas, from therapy. She hesitated. Maybe from you, if you want that job. His eyes widened slightly. Helping you heal? He asked. Or something else? She smiled a little crooked. I don't know yet, she said. I know I don't want to run every time I see you. That's a start. He huffed a laugh. I can work with that, he said. They stood in the soft glow of the fairy lights, the muffled sound of carols from someone's TV in the next apartment floating through the wall. Outside, snow fell gently, no longer a weapon, but a blanket. Do you have plans tonight? He asked after a moment. It is Christmas. Lucas was going to swing by later with takeout and a terrible movie, she said. But I suspect he'll be thrilled to avoid the third Die Hard rewatch. I have a tree, Nathan said, at the cabin. It's slightly crooked, half-decorated brown, and currently guarded by a very territorial space heater. I was going to sit in front of it and contemplate all my life choices. Would you maybe want to come ruin that plan? She laughed. Are you asking me on a Christmas date, Reed? She asked. I'm asking if you'd like to spend a few hours somewhere that isn't haunted by what happened this month, he said. We can call it whatever you want. She looked around her apartment. At the couch where she'd sat with Chloe, at the corner where Mark had stood, at the dent in the wall where her head had grazed. Then she looked back at him. Okay, she said, but I'm bringing the cookies. The cabin looked different at night. The first time she'd seen it, it had been a half-finished project. Drop cloths everywhere, walls in various stages of sanding, beams exposed like bones under skin. Now it glowed. Warm light spilled from the windows onto the snow. A wreath hung crookedly on the door. Inside, a fire crackled in the stone fireplace, throwing shadows over newly finished bookshelves. The tree Nathan had promised stood near the window. He hadn't lied. It leaned slightly to the left under the weight of too many ornaments on one side. The lights were uneven, as if someone had started at the top with great intentions and then gotten distracted halfway down. It's perfect, Evelyn said. You're a terrible liar, he said. I'm a designer with a high tolerance for charming asymmetry, she said. Big difference. They decorated the rest of the tree together. He unwrapped ornaments. She decided where they went. At one point, he held up a lopsided ceramic star. My wife made this, he said, at a paint-your-own pottery place. She insisted on hanging it every year, even though it looks like it was created by a drunk raccoon. It's beautiful, Evelyn said. It's hideous, he said, but it's her. They hung it near the top. Later, they sat on the couch with cocoa and cookies, legs almost, but not quite, touching. Do you ever think, he asked quietly, about how close this came to ending differently? You in the ravine, me in prison. Mark on that stage tonight, telling a story where you were proof he'd been right all along. All the time, she said, and then I think about how a voice on a microphone reminded me who I am, and who you are, and who he really is. She sipped her cocoa. I won't pretend I'm not scared of people now, she said, of how they can look like your friend and still push you toward the edge, of how your own mind can lie to you, but I'm trying not to let that fear define everyone. Including me, he said. Including you, she agreed. He looked at her for a long moment. May I ask you something selfish? He said. You just let me put tinsel on your handmade beams, she said. You've earned one selfish question. Do you think, he asked slowly, that there's a version of our story that isn't just the man who almost lost everything and the woman who almost died? A version that's just two people who met in a snowstorm and decided not to be afraid anymore? Her throat tightened. I think, she said, that version starts tonight, if we let it. He smiled then, really smiled, the lines around his eyes softening in a way she hadn't seen before. Then, he said, Merry Christmas, Evelyn. Merry Christmas, Nathan, she said. Outside, the wind shook loose a few clumps of snow from the roof. They slid past the window like white ghosts slipping away into the dark. Inside, under the leaning tree and the imperfect star, two people sat a little closer, letting the past be the past and the future be something they could write themselves. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was theirs. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.